Okay, so this video is going to be just off the cuff. I'm not going to edit it. I just want to get this out of me. And yeah, so let's get into it. I'm going to talk about a subject that is strange and confusing and relevant, at least if you're in this world of spirituality and paying attention to the New Age and Christianity and this whole conversation that, of course, is as old as time, but, well, particularly right now, it's relevant for me, obviously, but also for, it seems to be really coming to the surface, and becoming more mainstream as um, as New Age has become and is becoming more um, spread out throughout the culture and kind of the mainstream religion in a way. Um, while at the same time, Orthodox Christianity is starting to flower up. Um, and then, of course, you have the Epstein stuff and the occult connection there. So you got people talking about the Qabalah. You got Kundalini yoga coming up at the same time. A lot of people are, of course, that's been around for a while too, but I'm seeing more and more people focusing on that piece of, let's say, the New Age, which of course that comes from yoga, and you can't just say yoga's New Age, but if you're, we'll get more into definitions here as we continue. So this particular talk that I'm going to give, or this share, let's say, this story and what I, how I understand it. It was sparked by a acquaintance of mine, named Anton, who was deep in the New Age. I'll link his channel below, because this is kind of a commentary on that. Um, at least I'm gonna point to that a little bit, because it's fresh in my mind. One, and also he has um, walked a similar path as me. Seems to have had perhaps more direct experience with this aspect of the New Age, although I come at it from a different angle, um, in a sense. Um, so let's jump into it. So what I want to talk about is angels and demons and aliens. Okay, there's this whole thing that's becoming mainstream that, essentially, I think it's even become a meme, and perhaps a lot of people, write it off as crazy or being a kind of, joke, a conspiracy theory type thing, that demons are aliens, aliens are demons, right? When you get into well, if I would have heard that before I became a Christian, I would have been in that same camp, kind of rolled my eyes at that. Although maybe I wouldn't have, because let me back up and tell you a bit of my story. Um, I got deeply involved into the occult, specifically the Western esoteric tradition. So that is the Hermetic Qabalah, is what I would have described it at the time, which is, if you want to get a grasp on that real quickly, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is like, that's where I really, focused in on. So Aleister Crowley, you may have heard of this man. Um, a lot of people just say he's a Satanist and things like that. That's, perhaps once you understand, you you know once you have a certain perspective, you can say that. But when I heard that while I was in that world, I just wrote those people off like they don't know anything. You know, I understand the more nuanced, and you know, just to write him off as a Satanist is, it does a disservice to the complexity of the occult, because you have something like LaVeyan Satanism, which perhaps is kind of evil, but it's a joke, you know, compared to this high level Kabbalistic, you know, things where you're studying yoga, you're studying meditation, you're studying all these spiritual things, which Aleister Crowley did. Like, he had legitimate spiritual experiences, no doubt. So when you are in that world and you just hear that, you're not going to help the people who need to get out of that world, to see the truth, by saying that, because they're going to think that they know something you don't, and they're more sophisticated, and you just have this dumb, naive thing where everything that's not Christianity is evil, and you don't understand, you know, what it takes to be a spiritual, you know, explorer and all this stuff. You know, looking back after, I you know, how did I fall under this guy's spell? You know, he's you know, he killed a cat in, in 9 different ways because he heard that, you know, cats have 9 lives. He writes about this in his autobiography. Like, he was psychotic in that way. Brilliant in a way, you know, usually how it goes. But, you know, a sociopath to some degree. Maybe not a sociopath, maybe not a psychopath. I don't know exactly. Perhaps so traumatized and from having this literal Christian upbringing, and then at the time he grew up, you know, just this weird mess that became Aleister Crowley. Point is, I told you this is going to be unedited, off the top. I know I'm going a little fast. I kind of want to get a lot out, and have this stream of consciousness come through. So, discovered Aleister Crowley and was drawn to him like a magnet. I was just, for whatever reason, I was magnetically drawn to this man. It felt like this was the teacher I had been looking for forever, even though I was, you know, yeah, whatever reason, I was drawn to this man. When I discovered him, it was as if I knew he existed. Like, this guy must exist, you know. And then here he is. I knew the character of this sort had to be out there. He's very archetypal in that sense. I mean, I think Uncle Fester is based off Aleister Crowley, right? Like he is just has that. His name's Aleister, for God's sake. Like, what kind of, you know. So, anyways, I got sucked into that world at the same time as psychedelics came. So you get these two merging things together, and my whole world was rocked and turned inside out, right? It was like Neo realizing the Matrix is real. Psychedelics blew my mind, and you get, you know, you have these revelations and these downloads, and you see the true nature of reality, and you can't believe this is real, that these things are even out there, and nobody taught you about this, right? Mix that with the Western esoteric stuff, which, you know, has this lure of enlightenment is always right around the corner, and it's for you. And it doesn't specifically say there's like a shortcut, but it has that kind of promise to it. And it's fascinating, you know. And then realizing that there's all this esoteric stuff just kind of below the surface that most people aren't aware of. There seemed to be this coherent system here with the tree of life and the tarot and the Qabalah and magic, and that this was what religion is all about. This Christianity stuff, they don't know. What do? They go to church every Sunday and eat a wafer, and they think that's spiritual development. I'm over here fasting and, you know, meditating for hours, and, you know, trying to understand the symbolism of the universe and studying Hebrew and all this kind of stuff, right? This is the real work. This is the alchemy. This is the great work. So what's relevant for what I want to tell you next? Let's go here. You'll soon realize or come to the fact, at least from Crowley's perspective, which we can take him as an authority to some degree. He was a high-level Mason. He's often called the grandfather of the occult. He really did bring all this stuff forward and wrote extensively on all these things. A lot of people say, like, well, he's, an example of what not to be. But I think he's actually if you take these things to their epitome, you get an Aleister Crowley. He actually took all these things to their final end. That's what I actually think. So Crowley revived magic as the art and science of the royal art. Like, this is the thing. This is what the ancients practiced. This is the essence of religion. The royal art. That's what alchemy is. That's what magic is. And what he explained that you're actually doing, this high art, is invoking, in his words, extraterrestrial intelligences that help guide humanity. He says this outright in his Big Blue Brick, is what the book's called. His book, Liber 4, Magic and Mysticism. The two paths to completing the great work of finding your true will and, uniting with the Godhead, uniting all the opposites within you, all this type of stuff. So, that's what you're doing. He tells you outright that the whole purpose of magic essentially is to get yourself into an altered state of consciousness, whether through ritual or drugs or sex. Those would be the big three. Best in combination, right? And then with a purpose to invoke or to open yourself up to a particular being or deity. This could be anything from a planetary spirit to a demon or something else, right? So, of course, from this perspective, there's white magic and black magic and gray magic, and then he gets into all this stuff. We're not going to go there right now. Let's just say that we can put these things together. Magic and extraterrestrials have unless we don't want to believe Crowley and he just made this up himself, I don't believe so. I believe he studied deeply what he did. He was a high initiate of the Golden Dawn and other secret societies. He got, zoomed and made head of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which he turned into his own, a secret society that promulgated his religion. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law, Thelema, which means will. So he was, a serious occultist who went through serious initiations in some of the highest secret societies out there. Freemasonry, Ordo Templi Orientis, the Golden Dawn, practiced yoga, called himself a Buddhist for a while. The whole gamut. He wrote out, like I said, everything from astrology to tarot to Qabalah, which was kind of his main thing, because that's, again, let's talk about the Qabalah for a minute. So, a lot is coming out about the Qabalah right now. We, in the kind of, mainstream, we heard about people like Madonna doing Qabalah and things like this, the people they wore the red bracelet and things like this. So there was always like this kind of thing that the Qabalah was the religion of the elites. So when I discovered the Western esoteric tradition in Crowley and stuff, and everybody else, I discovered the Qabalah, the tree of life. This is the 10 circles that you see the diagram of. And this is the backbone to Freemasonry. This is the backbone to the Western esoteric tradition because it links everything together. There's a coherent system that brings astrology, tarot, alchemy, magic all together in this diagram, this map of creation, essentially, from the most spiritual, the most subtle, sublime, the Ein Sof, the limitless light, all the way down to the physical universe at the bottom. And this is the involution and evolution of creation. Through these 10 circles, spirit makes its way into matter. Okay? So you learn that, you start to learn, so you're like, oh wow, this is like the map of the mind of God. This is how it works. And so you can raise your consciousness up high and you can manifest, from pure spark down, get more substance, and then you have the actual thing at the bottom. So you can see how the law of attraction comes in here, and the hermetic principles, as above, so below, and the law of rhythm and all these things start to line up, or can be almost integrated into this diagram. Okay. So this diagram is used for building magic rituals based on correspondence. Okay? The fifth Sephirah, Geburah, corresponds with Mars, corresponds with the number 5, corresponds with the color red, corresponds there with the god Mars, and everything that's related to that. Tobacco, everything that's red, lust, energy, power, destruction, create, right? So you want to invoke that energy, then you light 5 red candles, and you find the names of the god who correspond with Mars, and you can connect this with any pantheon of pagan gods that you want, whatever resonates with you. And then you do the ritual, and you can be creative with it, you can be very traditional with it, and so on. So this is a glimpse into the Qabalah as I see it. This is very practical Qabalah, as they would call it, Hermetic Qabalah. Whereas there's traditional Jewish Qabalah where they would snuff at all the tarot stuff and astrology stuff, and it's more about based on the esoteric teachings of the Torah. But they do interlink as well. Okay? Make sure I don't run out of battery here. So, extraterrestrials, magic. Let's add another dimension to this. What is magic then? It's a technology. Fundamentally, it's a technology. A technology to raise your consciousness, to invoke an extraterrestrial, meaning something without a body, right? That's all extraterrestrial means. Now, you have to get the image out of your head of something, a little green man, right? Extraterrestrial means extra, above, something like that. Terrestrial, above the physical, okay? That's what it means. So, therefore, we could say that an angel or a demon is technically, by definition, an extraterrestrial. It is something that is without a body, or a very fine body, right? A type of intelligence that does not have a physical body. So, it's not a stretch now when you start to think, oh, aliens are demons. Okay. Now, another image you got to get out of your head is a demon as a little, whatever, a little gremlin running around or something, right? The demons, they inhabit the lower part of air, it will say in the Bible, or in the Bible and in biblical commentaries by the saints and so on, that the demons have this, they exist in the lower part of the air. This might be called the second heaven, maybe the astral plane. Okay? So, I'm going to jump to an experience I had that was very terrifying, uncomfortable, confusing. So, you remember I brought up psychedelics. So during this time, while I was deeply studying Crowley and his books and the Qabalah, that was my main thing. I was obsessed with this diagram, trying to understand it, making the connections, meditating on it, constantly spinning it around my mind. Like, this is the key. This is the key to everything. This is what I got from there, and I believed it, and I saw why that could be. It made sense. It was coherent, and it did bring me, and I'll get to this, a kind of wisdom. You might call it demonic wisdom. You might call it the wisdom of the fallen ones, the fallen symbolic tradition, as Father Turbo said, the Freemasons essentially are. And in my naivety, I never thought that there was, demonic wisdom. There's just wisdom. Nothing, and not only that, but nothing is forbidden. Anything that you can understand or read or get a hold of, is fair game, right? If you can decode it, piece it together, use it, then it's all good, right? This is the kind of spiritual naivety that I perhaps as the general, at least for the non-Christian, perhaps the Christian has some more discernment if they grew up with certain things, even if it goes too far to where everything outside of their very narrow is demonic. Maybe that can go too far, but you can go too far the other way, and there's no evil. Your evil looks like Hitler, but everything else, is, demons and stuff like that. Nah. And then you get this kind of union framework that is very much almost a given in this world, in the New Age. Like, people talk about the shadow and archetypes and the self, all these Jungian terms, as if they are reality instead of just one man's concepts. Now, they might be very good concepts and there might be some truth in them, but they're not reality, right? They're one man's map. And so people talk about them as if they have this ontological, objective reality to them. And so you can just unconsciously accept that, and that can be a problem. Okay. Again, remember, I told you this video is going to be all over the place. I'm talking fast. Perhaps that's partially because there's a lot. Perhaps I'm still processing some of it. It was traumatic. It's probably it certainly has left some scars on my psyche. It's not what I expected for my life, for it to go down this path. If you would have asked me when I was young, you're going to be somebody who gets kind of lost in the occult and then, comes out of it and has, is oppressed spiritually and has a lot of darkness, and whose life, kind of got turned upside down and messed up from these things. That's not what I would have expected or signed up for necessarily. Although I trust that there will be good fruit on the other side. And I believe, God puts us through what we need to go through to learn the lessons we need to learn, but also become the people we need to become, perhaps become the lights that we need to become to help others. So I pray that what I've gone through does serve. It makes easier and gives people hope, perhaps, who have gone through similar things and perhaps who are going through those things now, and perhaps can help some people avoid certain things. I've had a lot of traumatic, very, very traumatic experiences, mostly with psychedelics, and my operating system was, Crowleyanism mixed with Qabalah and this whole esoteric thing. I think it poisoned my mind in a way that I had nothing to measure it against. And so I didn't put the pieces together that, your life's not really doing so hot here. But I managed to avoid myself for so long because of it, with the excitement and the enthrallment of, demonic wisdom, let's say. I am gonna find my way back to the story I was about to share, but Anton shared that, his kind of guru that he had put a demon in him, and it gave him spiritual powers, and his spiritual powers were reading minds. And I was like, what were my spiritual powers from any entities that were in me? Because I believe there was. And I'll tell you why at a certain point. And that's what it was. It was demonic wisdom. It was, people told me many times, they would puff up my ego and tell me, oh my God, like, how are you, you're so deep, you make all these connections, and not only that, but your wisdom sounds like it's come from, from the trenches, from the real hard, just puff my ego up, make me seem like I'm this great spiritual teacher who's been to hell and back and made it through, and now I have all this wisdom to share. And it was all, it was all intellectual. Nothing made it down into my heart. So that's what I got from these, right? I got the ecstasy of awe, but this very, Adderall type awe, this, and I ran on those fumes for a long time until I finally broke down. And then I saw behind the curtain what was fueling me. So that's how, that's how this stuff works. And I'm still kind of naive. I'm like, man, really? Like, evil is hard for me in my naive, virgin, green self is like this shit's real. And if evil, it's real, it's really evil. Like, it's not like, yeah, but play evil. Like, it's playing the long game. It's not gonna show itself because it's also intelligent. The fallen ones are intelligences who know humanity. You get this in the Christian tradition. They know humanity better than you do. They know your own mind and your own passions and all these things better than you do. Which is why you need Christ to discern and to battle them. You will not do it yourself. And I had no real conception. Like, I didn't believe that at all. That was, Christ is somebody who reached a certain state of consciousness and became the God-man, like we all can become, because we're all gods. And this is what you get fed in this New Age world. And you can run with that for so long, because you can just, the demons will give you little revelations and little healings, and one plant medicine ceremony to the next, and you can work this out, but then the next thing comes, and you're on this healing hamster wheel. That's my experience, right? You could say, well, you did it all wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. I know what I experienced. I know what happened to my life and my psyche, and the dreams and the demonic attacks. And not only that, but I have a long tradition of saints and the Orthodox Christian Church that goes very in deep about these things, and how the demons work, and how this very real spiritual battle works. And to dismiss all that and be like, nah, the New Age stuff is, just you gotta awaken your Kundalini and all this karma stuff, all these things. I think a lot of this is a case of we don't want to raise our hand and look stupid and be the one who says, I don't know about any of this stuff. And so we're all just kind of like, yeah. And somebody with a little bit more confidence says it, they had one experience, and because that's what I was doing. And people, I was running retreats, and people listened to me, and I had all just this stuff, and I could take one concept and just brrr, and yet all of it was delusion. Most of it. It was intellectual. It was demonic wisdom. It was like math, you can have a little intuition, and then you can just take it and go this way with it, and then connect this way, and it's, that's what I was good at. That's what I could do. Okay. Let's try to bring some coherence here. So, the extraterrestrial bit and the demon bit. So, I had one very visceral experience with an extraterrestrial that was a demon. It's the same thing as a demon, but it had a very, what I would say, alien feel to it. I was in college, and I had binders with like all of Crowley's stuff and my Qabalah stuff, my tarot cards, just all over the place. So one night I took LSD, and started to come on. And before this point, I had some very dark experiences, and I mean full-blown panic attacks, and worse, and yet I still didn't put the two and two together, because my first experiences were so profound and beautiful that even though I kept having these demonic experiences, it was just, this union framework, like, that's me. I got to get in there and clean my shit out, It's my demons that keep coming up. Why does this keep happening to me? It's me. It's not the fact that I'm, got a perverted belief system, unhealed trauma, and which I did have unhealed trauma, so there is an aspect to that. But what I didn't need to do was keep taking psychedelics and plant medicine to go back in there and try to, Okay, so took LSD, and before I know it, the panic started to come on, and I got extremely paranoid, looking out the window, hearing people next door talking about me, and then thinking that the FBI, somebody was gonna just bust in my apartment. I went and hid all my Crowley stuff and occult stuff, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm a fugitive here. I'm doing illegal things, and I'm doing this esoteric stuff. Like they're gonna, just had this, probably a little bit of megalomania, something. Okay. But a kind of, just deep paranoia. But what happened next was a voice came into my head, a being came into my head, and it was, when I seen it, it's like it looked like an extraterrestrial. It had a very long head, and it had this texture to it, and it was in my head, and it was this is where it gets kind of uncomfortable and vulnerable, but it seemed to be trying to convince me to be, or that I was a homosexual. And I kept saying like homo. I was like panicking, and I think part of me was trying to, name this thing that was in me, or name myself from its perspective. It was very strange. And it was just like, I got bad code in my head, and it was just confusing, and it had a voice to it and a texture. And then I went to the bathroom, I remember, and I looked in my eyes, and like they weren't my eyes anymore, like full blown. It looked like a kind of a bird, like a hawk, and that's how it was, like very sharp, and it wasn't my eyes. I was looking, and it was terrifying. And I was on fire. My feet, all my toes started to spread, and I was like, I'm gonna fucking turn into an alien. Like I felt like I was transforming into another creature. I got in the bathtub, turned on the hot water, nothing helped. Then I went in and proceeded to kind of humiliate myself in front of my roommate. Just, I told him to to beat me like a dog. It was I don't know what else to explain it. It was a humiliating, demonic, confusing experience. It wasn't just a bad trip, because I've had just a bad trip, a paranoid trip. This was next level. And I have no doubt that it was, now looking back, it was completely related to the occult stuff that I was in, and imbibing Aleister Crowley into my psyche, and reading things and knowing things that I just shouldn't have been exposed to. And yeah. So after that, I stayed up. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I felt like I'd been electrocuted. I remember I called my friend over. He was like, dude, like he could just feel it in the air. Like what the fuck happened in here? And yeah, so that was that's the experience where I can say like demons, extraterrestrials, magic, psychedelics. Oh yeah. Also trauma, and how, there's these guys coming out now that, what's this guy's name? Dan Duvall. He was on The Deep End with Taylor Welch, I think. Talking about how, he's working with these ex-satanic abuse survivors, right? And that he's getting the stories out of them, and that they would, use the Qabalah, the Tree of Life, as a template for their rituals, like I told you earlier, but that they would essentially traumatize these people, whether it's breaking a limb or stopping their heart and then reviving them in the ritual, depending on the Sephiroth that they're working on, and implanting the framework of the Tree of Life in them. Now, that's exactly what I was doing when I was studying the Tree of Life in the Qabalah. That's what you're instructed to do, is to make this template the backbone of your psyche. Now, they explained it as like you're reordering your subconscious.